So here we go, finally starting the second book of one of my favorite series of all time. I'm very excited for this, as you saw on video number 1. So let's just go right ahead and work on this. Hello everybody, how are you? I am Ari Chinarho, and welcome to this new episode where we'll be talking about Eldest by Christopher Paolini, one of my favorite books of all time. You will see why this is a story that greatly influenced me in many ways, and I'm very excited to be writing about it, to be reviewing it today. So, as always, before we begin, these two guides right here are available in both digital and physical format if you would like to check them out. They'll be down here below us in the description, and like that, there's also this book right here, this beauty right here, that will come out on Amazon on December the 1st, so be waiting for it. I am very thrilled to share it with you. So yeah, why not? Let's just go ahead and work with the P.A.O, the possible smell addiction, for this book, which is gonna be this book doesn't really smell of anything. It doesn't smell bad, but it doesn't really smell good, so I'll just give it a 5.5. Yeah, so let's head on with the plot now, and I will try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, so be warned. There might be minor spoilers about the plot in the whole video, but I'll try to keep them as tiny as possible. So, the plot for this book begins 3 days after Eragon defeated Durza at the end of Eragon, and he is now headed for a new adventure, right? The world has changed. There's a new dragon rider in the world, and now this new dragon rider needs to find the crippled who is whole, this mysterious entity who contacted him at the end of the last battle and told him to go to Elismera, the capital of Duweld and Varden, the kingdom of the elves, to train and become to train to defeat Galbatorix, right? So Eragon is now tasked with this big mission to go and find this crippled who is whole, this mysterious entity, and somehow try to learn from him and become this new dragon rider, right? This powerful dragon rider capable of defeating Galbatorix. However, before he is able to leave, there is this huge event that takes place that shakes the Varden and Eragon himself in a very profound way, and you will see when you read the book that this will influence his decisions in a very big way after this. So Eragon is changed forever. The plot of this book, the future of this world, is also changed with this event, and this happens all before he is able to leave Farthendur to begin his journey north towards the Elven kingdoms of Elismera, right? However, that is not all, because on the western coast of Algasia we have Roran, Eragon's cousin, who is currently having a struggle of his own. So you see, after Eragon revealed himself, Galbatorix has sent a series of soldiers alongside two Razak, seeking to capture Roran and use him against Eragon. So Roran is in trouble here. The town is pretty much under siege, and he has to go hide in the woods. However, Roran will have to make a very difficult decision, which will include trying to convince the town to leave. So Carvajal, which has for so long hosted humans, will have to be abandoned for his mission to be completed, which is essentially to reach freedom in the only country that is not, the only place that is not directly controlled or influenced by Galbatorix, which is Surda, that country at the very south. So he will try to escape there and bring as many people as possible, including Katrina, his wife, his pretty much fiance at this point. He will try to take them away, take them to safety, and hopefully he'll be able to save them. So you have these two storylines at the same time in this book. You have both Eragon, who begins his journey north, and Roran, who begins his journey south, and it's a very interesting dynamic here. However, that is getting into review territory, so let's just go with the flow and change to the review. So I got a little inspired when I was making this Spanish video, and it turned out to be a very long review, so now I'll try to make it a little shorter. So let's begin right away with the plot, and this is, if not my favorite, one of my two favorite books in the Inheritance cycle. It is an amazing story, and it proves that Christopher Paolini is capable of so much more than just adapting Star Wars into a fantasy world. And let's go directly and start with Roran's story here. Roran is one of my favorite characters in this book series, and I really think during this book he suffers, if not one of his biggest transformations so far, and the way in which he achieves it, it's magnificent. Roran manages to change the world on his own pretty much, and change the fate of many of the characters, and all because of decisions that he makes selflessly in this story. So Roran's plot is one of my favorites. It's the first side plot that we have to Eragon's story in the book yet. Later on in the story, we will have more side plots focusing on other characters such as Neswada, for example. But for now, Roran is the first introduction to a more complex structure within the story, and I really think that Christopher made it very, very well. He balanced both storylines in a very intelligent way to never bore the reader. So you always have, if it's Eragon having something interesting, then it's cool. However, once Eragon's story begins to slow down and become a little more boring in a way, he changes to Roran, who is also having an interesting adventure of his own at the same time. So you're constantly excited to go, first to read what you're reading right now, but also to return to the other character to know what will happen with them. So it's a very, very, very well done story in this book. I really, really like how Christopher works with both storylines, how he makes them work together, but more importantly, how each one of them is self-consistent in a very, very profound way. And now switching to Eragon, Eragon also suffers a huge transformation in this book, both literally, both physically and psychologically. And it is a very, very interesting way to see how he is becoming a writer, how he is no longer just another human, but he is becoming more and more powerful in order to defeat Galbatorix in the end. And not only that, but this book also shows us a whole lot about elven culture, which is probably even more developed than dwarven culture, because we do see the dwarves, but the time that we spend with the dwarves is mostly with the Varden, at least in book 1. Later on in the books we do see more of the dwarves, but for now the elves are very well developed, and the way in which Christopher shows it, I really enjoyed it. I really, really like how Christopher developed the cultures in a way that is not info-dumpy. He avoids info-dumps as much as possible and manages to give the reader information in a very organic and interesting way. So that's also something I really like about him, even though that leans more into the narrative section of the video. But anyway, into characters, this book has some of the greatest character arcs in the whole book series. And first of all, Roran himself. Roran is a great character. I really, really love how Christopher works with him, how he develops him in such an intrinsic and profound way. Like, Roran is a farmer. He is not a soldier. He is not accustomed to murder, to death, to blood, to violence. He is not used to any of those things. And now having to face it right next to him, having to stay in such a dangerous situation all the time, of course it affects him as a person. And I really like how Christopher begins to explore how it all changes him, how Roran has to cope with all that information, with all that violence, with all that news about his cousin around the world. Like, he is suddenly having to hear his cousin doing all these huge deeds and being a dragon rider, a magician, an extremely powerful magician at that. It is truly an incredible transformation that he suffers, and I love Roran so much because the way in which he learns to cope with all those things that are very, very impactful for him makes him such a great person in my eyes. He is definitely, probably my favorite character in the book series, if not for Saphira herself. So Roran is amazing. I also love Eragon. His transformation here, it's not as big as in other books, but I do love how Oramis, his journey to do Weldenvarden and learning more about the elven culture, changes him in a way, how he begins to train this transformation that he suffers. As I just said, it kind of demonstrates in a more tangible way how he is slowly becoming this more prepared dragon rider, ready to face more danger, and how the book sets up the character arc that he has to go through in the next one, it's fantastic. Like, the ending of this book sets up the beginning of the next one in a very, very successful way. This is probably my favorite ending in the story as well, because it leaves the reader craving for more, like desperately needing to know what happens next. This is so well achieved in this story. I love it so much. There are also other characters that I love, especially Murtagh. Like, Murtagh also suffers an incredible transformation in this book, and it is devastating. Like, this is one of the points in which Christopher really diverged from Star Wars between this and Roran. So Murtagh and Roran are the main mechanisms by which Christopher manages to leap away from the Star Wars cliche, which was so dominant in book 1. He manages to be free of that, to release himself from that and become something more, become something new. And I love how he achieves it with Murtagh, because Murtagh brings such a huge new variable into the battlefield. He becomes pretty much the new big figure in this war, and the way in which it is set up not only works perfectly well, but what it brings into question for future books is also magnificent, because it foreshadows not only Murtagh himself, but also other things, mainly about where he got his powers from, for example. So it's truly a very well-designed ending. That climax in this book, it sets up so many things in such a masterful way that I love it. You also have, for example, Neswata and Elva, and even though we don't really get to know those characters that much in this book, Neswata, they both appeared in book 1, and here they appear towards the end, but they're not really that important, except that they are they're beginning to be set up for the future of the series, and they will both become pivotal characters in the war, pivotal characters in the story arc, and they are incredibly important characters. And the way in which they are set up here, even if it's not that glamorous, that big, it does foreshadow what they will become in the future. So I really love the work with characters in this book. As well, the narrative, Christopher is a great reader, and you can really see how he knows how to express ideas in a very successful way. He speaks in a way that is fluent, like a river, or like Brandon Sanderson, for example. He leads you forward, he leads you on, and it's always very easy to comprehend. And I love his narrative because it fits perfectly with the world, with all that he's setting up. It is literally his voice, and I love that so much. So the narrative is great, the plot is amazing. You can still see some remnants here and there from the Star Wars book, from technically movie 5, The Empire Strikes Back. You can still see some remnants from that plot, but slowly Christopher is becoming more independent from those storylines. He is slowly making himself forget Star Wars and make the Inheritance Cycle his own story, and I really like that. It is very, very clear here, and in books 3 and 4, Brissinger and Inheritance, you can really see how he is completely independent of Star Wars by then, and that process, it begins here. So my grade for Eldest, book 2 in the Inheritance Cycle, is going to be a 95 out of 100, and yes, I know, but this is subjective. This is one of my favorite books. It changed my life in many ways. Thanks to this book, I read pretty much this much in a single day. So, yeah, I'm giving it a 95. It's probably more in the 70s if I were more objective with these, more in the 70s, probably low 80s. This is my channel. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I really hope that you will see the next one when it comes out. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you later. Bye.